Hello and welcome back, my beauties. Thank you for joining me on this fine Wednesday evening. As always, it is my pleasure to have you back, and just the usual reminder to please remember to like and subscribe, and please hit that notification bell because that will let you know whenever I have a new video that's ready for you to view for your viewing pleasure. So today I've got something a little bit different. Still spooky, of course. However, we're going to be talking about different types of hauntings. Now, some of you may be saying, what do you mean? A haunting is a haunting. However, nay, my friend. There are different types, and they come in different forms, and they quite often show themselves as having different kind of effects and consequences for those that they may be haunting. So, we're going to start off today by talking about something that's known as a residual haunting. Now, I have made some notes because I want to make sure that I'm giving you accurate information. Now, residual haunting, from what I know, is that residual hauntings is almost like an occasion or a time that's on a loop. So you imagine a movie that's a certain scene in this movie is on a loop, but it's being repeated again and again. And usually this occurs from a traumatic event, something significant that may have happened to the spirit, whether it be a murder or SA or something horrific such as. And that individual, the spirit sometimes doesn't know that they've actually passed on, and they repeat that trauma. Now that sounds horrible in and of itself. However, other people believe that that's not necessarily just the case when it comes to residual hauntings. But the other thing is that residual hauntings are almost like a moment caught in time. So say somebody did a certain occupation. Let's give a house mistress that would have worked with the children back in like the Victorian times, and she would have been responsible for educating them as well as, making sure that they learnt their manners and so on and so forth. So imagine she goes through her daily routine over and over and over and over again, and does it for many, many, many years, and then passes. Her memory, her imprint, her energy is imprinted on that building, in the walls, in the very brickwork of the building, and it repeats on a loop. And as we know, energy is everywhere, and brick in particular and buildings, they do absorb energy. That's why when you can walk into a certain room, you can feel a certain vibe, or you feel like, oh, I don't really like the way it feels in here, or, this place is kind of giving me like a weird feeling. That's because houses, buildings, wherever they may be, they absorb energy. And they absorb an energy that either may be left behind from many, many years ago, or they absorb energy that may be more recent of the people living in the home. And as you know, everybody's home as well has a certain vibe and energy depending on the people living there. So residual hauntings are very much about that energy being absorbed. So as I mentioned, it's kind of like a recording tapes. The thing is on a loop. What some people have described when they talk about residual hauntings, especially when I've watched particular ghost hunting channels, and they talk about these like grand buildings. They maybe have held a ball there or a really like huge fancy party, and people won't necessarily see something, but they will hear the sound of people talking, singing, laughing, and it's like a recording. It's almost as if somebody has pressed play, but you look around and there's no logical place for it to be coming from. And that's also a type of residual haunting. So it's not always visual, it's not always from something horrific, but it can be also auditory as well, and also just from something that was either significant in that moment of time, absorbed by the building, or significant to the spirit that memory was imprinted upon the building. Then, of course, we have the infamous or famous, depending on how you see it, poltergeist, which literally derives from the German word meaning noisy ghost. And reason being is because the poltergeist has developed quite a reputation for itself for creating quite chaotic noise and mess and destruction in its wake for various number of reasons. Now, the reason for poltergeists have been debated over the years. However, based on, what I've read, what I've watched, and trust me, I've watched many a paranormal program, many a paranormal film and documentary and so on and so forth. Never experienced poltergeist, thankfully. But what I have learned from it is that the poltergeist usually occurs because, again, of energy. Now, when this takes place, quite often it is said that it happens during a girl's adolescent years, specifically teenage girls more than teenage boys for some reason. I'm not sure if it has anything to do with the particular hormones, but that's allegedly what is said. That teenage girls, when they're going through that difficult time of adolescence with the huge neurological developments happening in their brain, it's very equivalent to the development that happens in the brain of a toddler is what happens with the development of the brain of an adolescent. It's a lot going on, plus the hormones, plus life events, anything they may find stressful, which, with adolescents, it's pretty much everything, and it's the way they're wired. So it's said that this energy, that especially if you have more than one teenage girl in the household, can manifest itself and grow bigger and bigger, and it feeds off that individual's energy essentially. Not so much siphoning the energy, but it uses the excess that is produced to release the chaos that teen girl, for example, is feeling inside into physical and auditory form. So noisy ghosts, poltergeists, they will usually be the ones where, if you've ever seen, footage of things flying across the room suddenly, a violent slamming of doors. For some reason, it always seems to be doors and chairs, which is why when I see videos like that, I will question and raise an eyebrow. However, poltergeists are known for creating as much ruckus and chaos as possible. So whenever you have heard of cases such as that, like things maybe levitating when there's no possible way that could happen, or a drawer opening and things flying out of it. Again, it's not so much said that it's always a spirit or a ghost, even though it's named after one, but it's actually the manifestation of the energy of the teenage girl. They often say that when that individual that the energy revolves around leaves the home, the activity can often just stop. It won't happen anymore whilst that person is not there. And the home will be peaceful and quiet because that individual's not there. And sometimes it may continue, but in a much smaller form because, as I said earlier, buildings do absorb energy. So in that case, there's a kind of like little bit of a residue left over from the teen girl or individual's energy that manifests itself, but not as far as the magnitude of when that young person is actually in the environment. That's when it kind of goes tenfold, which is why in some cases people have had poltergeist experiences and thought it was attached to the home, when that's not always the case. It's actually caused by an individual. So when that individual moves, regardless of whether they have changed environment or not, if they are still feeling the same way and the chaos is still deep inside of them, it can still very much occur regardless of what home or house environment they move to. And that is one version of the poltergeist when we speak about it in that kind of case. However, when it is not a teenage girl or a certain individual that may be experiencing a lot of stress that is causing the poltergeist activity, it can often be because of a gathering of spirits. So essentially, quite a few spirits come together and they pull their energy together in order to cause as much chaos as possible. So moving heavy objects, making noise, creating an environment that is unstable, unpredictable, and as a result, very stressful and obviously frightening. Now, quite often they say this is when the spirits are angry. They're angry about something in particular. They may have experienced a group trauma there, or they may be separate spirits from different times, but they have something in common that ensures that they all have this anger inside of them that can't allow them to pass on. Almost like unresolved business, if you will, which is something that we do hear about quite often. Now, the key to getting rid of the poltergeist in that case, they say, is to try and find out the source of the spirit's anger. What is it that has them so vexed that they not only want to take it out on your house and home, but they also cannot pass on? And they say that if you can help find that out, then you can help them find some peace and the activity will stop. Other times, poltergeist activity can just randomly stop just as randomly as it occurred. And there's very little explanation or kind of idea about why it happened in the first place. And also, some people find it only lasts a few days. They might have these weird experiences where things just fall or sudden noises are made and they can't find the source of it, or like I say, a door slams, or an item that couldn't possibly have fallen off a sturdy surface just does, but then a couple of days pass and it goes away. The key is finding out what you're dealing with. What type of poltergeist are you dealing with? How can you help it to pass on or prevent it from happening? Of course, as we know, knowledge is key, and that will of course help you to protect yourself when it comes to dealing with such spirits and or energies. Now we move on to something darker. This one I would say is probably the type of haunting that's feared the most, which would be the demonic haunting. Now, when it comes to demons, of course, depending on people's faith systems, they can essentially say that the demons are those that work for Satan or the devil, and they are the opposite of what an angel would be considered to be. Whereas the angel is good, demons are bad. But of course, I'm not here to talk about faith systems or people's beliefs. That's not what this is about. I'm talking specifically about the idea of the demonic entity or the demonic being. And what we mean by that is that it's an entity or a being that was never a human. Unlike a spirit or a ghost that may have been in human form and lived on, this side of the veil in our realm, the demon never did. They were never human. They didn't, pass on and become angry, or they weren't evil in life and then became demons. They are completely different kettle of fish that we're talking about here. Quite often when people describe demonic hauntings, the way they differentiate them from ghosts or spirits is that they will describe a certain scent or smell that is experienced in the home. A lot of people say it smells like sulfur, which essentially is like a rotten egg smell. Or some people say it indeed smells just like decay in general. Something that's just decaying hideously. Not a nice thought. The other things that go along with demonic hauntings are, of course, violence. So quite often people will end up getting hurt. Quite often people end up with scratch marks, bruises, where they have no idea where they've come from. Now, stereotypically, if we're to look at it in the Hollywood form, usually they will come, the scratch marks, in threes. And you will see the 3 scratch marks usually on somebody's back or somebody's side. And that is the stereotypical way that we usually see it on TV shows and movies. However, that won't always be the case. Other times it can be that the person will wake up with an injury that they couldn't possibly have gotten in their sleep. We're not talking about a little bump or a bruise. We're talking about quite a significant wound that they'll wake up and not understand why it's happening. Some people akin sleep paralysis to also being to do with demons. Now, I don't know, you may have heard of the sleep paralysis demon. Now, sleep paralysis in itself is an entire video of its own, so I'm not going to go too deeply into it right now. But what I will say is that sleep paralysis, what it essentially feels like, and I've experienced it a few times in my life and it is not pleasant whatsoever, is that you are half awake, half asleep almost. So you have come into your conscious state. You're no longer in your subconscious or unconscious mind. You are conscious. You can even see the room around you, your partner, say, next to you, or your cat at the end of your bed. You can feel that you are in your bed, but you cannot move. You cannot move your body. Sometimes you can move your head a little bit, but rarely. Usually all you can move are your eyes. And it's not just the fear of being in that paralysis, which is scary enough, but there's also this sense that there's this entity in the room with you. And this entity does not wish you well. And that's why quite often the entity is described as demonic in nature. Hence, sleep paralysis demon. And they say that it's the demon that's actually causing this. And as I said, if we were to go into sleep paralysis, we would be here for a little while. However, I'm happy to do a video on that another time if people would like me to. Moving on to other types of demons that manifest. People often say they see a mist. Usually it will be a black mist or fog, kind of smog that moves through the house randomly. Sometimes it cannot be seen by the naked eye, but rather it's caught on camera. And there are movements that occur which makes the camera move, or if it's a motion camera, or it's something that is randomly caught on camera and can't be explained by, say, a pet or a person, because maybe there's nobody home, or there's one person home and that individual is sitting peacefully on the couch, for example. Other times people say that the demonic entity is down to possession. So this is again where we can come based on your beliefs and faith systems, whether you believe that possession is possible. Now, many people believe that it is, and they believe that it can often happen to people who are going through a particularly difficult time in their lives. Not because their faith is weak, but because they are going through a deep struggle, whether it be mental instability, mental illness, significant grief-stricken, or very depressed, very low. And at those times, because your vibration, your energy is so low, that's when the demon will swoop in and take advantage, so to speak. There's a very famous case that happened, or there's been quite a few, but the one that I kind of know most about is the case of Annalise Michel. Now, this happened, I believe, in the 60s, if I'm correct. No, 1976, sorry, my apologies. So it was actually July 1st, 1976 is when she passed away. And she was actually subjected to 67 Catholic exorcism rites, which is a crazy number if you think about it, because exorcisms, they do happen, they are real. You need permission from somebody very high up in the Catholic Church, usually the Pope, for it to go ahead. And they are very taxing for everybody involved, especially considering the amount of energy that is actually used. Now, Annalise Michel, they made a movie which obviously was dramatized, but it wasn't complete fiction. And the movie itself was called The Possession of Emily Rose. And that's a film that, if you're interested in this type of thing, I do recommend watching, because it is based on the true story of what happened to Annalise. Now, Annalise, there's also evidence on YouTube of what the poor girl looked like before she passed away. And there was also a whole trial held against her parents and the priests and doctors involved because they claimed negligence and also putting her through that many exorcisms and not getting her what they deemed to be appropriate help as the cause of her death. But that, of course, is for you to decide at the end of the day. Speaking of angels, as we did briefly mention, and I'm not going into loads of detail, but they do say that demonic entities can also come in angelic forms. So an entity that is beautiful makes you feel peaceful and calm. And the idea is that when they look like that, or people have described them to look like that, is because, of course, that's what they want. They want you to feel peaceful and calm, so you let your guard down so they can essentially manipulate you to commit sinful acts and do wrongdoings on their behalf because they gain power from the wrongdoings that you do. And I'm sure you may have heard, especially if you're a true crime fan, there have been many a time where an individual has claimed possession or being controlled by a demon or hearing a demon telling them what to do, which is why they committed such heinous acts. In fact, there have been famous court cases because of it. Now, briefly mentioning and going back to Annalise Michel, if you would also like a case on that, I'm quite happy to talk about that one as well. It is quite in depth. However, if you would like me to talk about it, let me know down below in the comments. I am open to suggestions. Let's carry on. Other than the black mist, black fog, or potential angel form, there is the more common way that a demon is described, and this is when people say that the demon looks horrific, terrifying, a creature that is hideously ugly and would just scare the absolute daylights out of you. Something that is from your very nightmares and that you would never want to see. And there are people that have claimed to have seen these things or seen elements of these things either in reflections of mirror or glass, and quite often they will have, like I said, the sleep paralysis or nightmare experiences where they will see these demonic creatures. Now, unlike other spirits and ghosts, demons or demonic entity hauntings do mean you harm. They are not there for any benign reason by any kind of stretch of the imagination, and throughout history there have been many cases where people have claimed to have lived out these experiences. You know, in particular, looking at the Perron family, which the film The Conjuring was based on, their whole story was based on a true story. The Perron family did exist. And there are, I believe, a couple of members of them still alive today that are adamant that that is what they experienced in that house. And Ed and Lorraine Warren were very famous, very religious Christian demonologists that were known to go and help these people out. And there's been a whole Conjuring series made about Lorraine and Ed Warren, even though there's quite a bit of controversy around them as well. And again, like I said, that's a story for another day. But just to quote from a particular website which I found quite useful, which is called hauntedoc.com. These creatures are very strong, unlike human spirits. They don't mind showing it. There have been cases where people have been thrown through the air and even attacked. Apparently their main goal is to break down a person's free will in order to make way for possession. This can take days, months or years, but time is of no concern to them. They have a hatred for mankind that dates back to the days of God and Lucifer. They have lived for a millennia and will be here long after we are gone. So you must understand that though you may be able to get these creatures to leave a dwelling with religious provocation, you will never destroy them. They could go to the next place down the road if they choose, and most likely they won't go far of a distance, as distance is of no issue to these creatures. They could go from a certain part of America, here they've named Maine, to California on a thought. Demons are capable of changing form right in front of you, from human form to inhuman form. They are neither male nor female nor anything in between, but can change to meet their needs People mostly see demons as black masses standing in doorways or near rooms, and sometimes they are called shadow devils. So that's direct quote from the website hauntedoc.com, which I will list in the description. So now moving on from the jolly subject of demonic hauntings, we go on to something that is known as the intelligent haunting, the intelligent activity or interactive activity. So when it comes to intelligent hauntings, what they mean by that is that it is a spirit or a ghost that is very much well aware that they have passed on. They are well aware that they are now beyond the veil in another realm, but they are able to cross over. Now, sometimes they are able to cross over from this realm to the next. Sometimes they are stuck in this realm. On occasions where they are stuck in this realm, they may seek to make contact with humans to gain some help. And we see that quite a bit as well, whether it be in fiction or non-fiction, on TV or film, where a spirit may need assistance from a human being in order to move on, or they have some unfinished business. It's also said that a spirit can get stuck in this realm if they had died a very traumatic death, and usually to do with murder or being taken at very, very young age as well. Now, interactive and intelligent hauntings can be spirits that are confused. So they know something's not right, they know that they're not okay, but they may not necessarily know that they have kind of ended their life in this realm. So it's usually between the two. But what makes them considered to be intelligent hauntings is that they can interact with the living. They can either use machinery such as EMF readers or REM pods. These are things you will often see if you watch paranormal TV shows where they go around to different haunted locations, and they're motion detected quite often. They will let off a noise or lights. There's also like different sensors that people put up. One that's quite popular is that the whole room will fill with like green dots, and you can see if anything passes through the green dots, there will be like an entity that will be present in the room, and they can use that equipment to communicate with human beings, answer direct questions, give information about their life or about the building or residence they may be in, and also ask questions of the humans or favours of the humans if they do need assistance passing on. And these are what are called intelligent or intellectual interactive hauntings. Now, usually other times is where, like I said, other than this sense of injustice, there may also be a fear of going to the other side and passing on. There may also be a reason that they are specifically attached to a loved one. Or what is also quite common and has been used in many a movie, as well as believed to be in reality for some people's experiences, is that the human entity will be attached to an object. So it may be a ring that they always wore that they really loved, or in some cases, if it's a child spirit, it may be a doll that belonged to them and they are attached to that object, a watch, a necklace, something like that. And that is what's keeping them around, is that they have still got an attachment to the person or to an object, and as such they haven't, or they're not ready to let go of either the attachment to their loved one or the attachment to the object to be able to fully pass on. So when this happens, you will often see people people that investigate these things and try and essentially assist the spirits to pass on, to be able to move on to the next realm, wherever or whatever that may be. I do not know. Or beyond the veil, as I like to put it, to the other side, where they can be at peace, where their spirit doesn't need to worry about the human experience, as I like to call it. What we deal with as human beings. I like to believe that spirits don't have to worry about that. They don't have to worry about our kind of everyday woes and extreme from the extreme to the minuscule. The next one I'm going to talk about is one that, again, you may have heard of, is known as shadow people. Now, shadow people are very interesting because they are an entity all of their own, and some believe them to actually be extraterrestrial. I'm not an expert when it comes to the ETs, however, let's delve. So when I say extraterrestrial, what I mean is that some people, and these are only, some beliefs when it comes to shadow people, is that they aren't entities such as spirits or ghosts or demonic or anything like that, but instead they are their own beings. They are their own creation, so to speak. And they actually come through portals, which we will get onto very shortly. And through these portals, they are coming from a different plane of existence, if you will, a different realm. And they are coming like, we hear of aliens when we speak about things like this, to figure out our life form. What are we about? And to study us, if you will. Now, quite often, when I have either read articles about this or seen it on TV shows where these people swear blind that this happened to them and this is happening in their home, it's quite focused on the children of the home or the child of the home. Reason being is because some people say that young children do still have that kind of sixth sense that apparently some believe we were all born with, and that we lose as we get older because of adult woes, issues, problems, just adult business, and our minds develop and change, and we don't see things the way children, and also some people believe animals do. We don't have that sense anymore. Whereas children, they tend to believe, are more open to these things, and therefore, because the shadow people are aware of that, they are more interested in taking the children with them back to their plane of existence. Now, as I said, that's only one form of belief. The more common one is that the shadow people are these entities that you see from the corner of your eye. So very much imagine a shadow. So we're talking silhouette form here. No features, no facial features, no curvature of a body feature, just a silhouette. A shadow, but rather than see how shadows change depending on the light, these are darker than dark. They are pure black shadow. And in this silhouette form, sometimes it will be a rushing from the corner of your eye, and you'll suddenly look and you'll think maybe it was a member of your household that has gone past. But then when you've called out to them and said, what are you doing? You find out that they're actually in a completely different area of the house. It couldn't possibly have been them. So quite often, and more often than not, we tend to just go, I must just be seeing things, and forget all about it, because it seems too strange to be true more often, and it's easier to dismiss it. However, if it was happening again and again and again, I think that would be a time when people would start to question it a lot more and look into it, which is what some people have done. So the most common shadow figure seen is known as the Hat Man. And the Hat Man is exactly as he sounds. He is usually between 6 feet to 7 feet tall, appears in doorways or at the end of the bed, or peeking his head around the corner, as you can imagine is quite disturbing in itself. And he does indeed wear a hat. The hat is kind of like a fedora hat, but not really. It's about that high with quite a wide brim, and again he is all black, no features, no expressions, nothing like that. And people have said they've either seen him during sleep paralysis or they have seen him appear as they have suddenly woken up in a panic. Another time when you see shadow entities or shadow people will be when you may be in a group setting and somebody will get up to get something, and very much similar to what I mentioned before, you will see something run past really quickly. And you may question at first because it doesn't look like the same height or build as the person who got up and was moving around the house. So again, you question people around you and everyone was like, no, I didn't see anything, or no, that wasn't me. And you're left wondering, what did I see? because other than the Hat Man, the other common version happens to be what looks like about the child's height, and it looks like a child running. It's literally that kind of image. And again, it will be across a doorway or from the corner of your eye. And it can happen so quickly that it does have you questioning whether you actually did see it or not. Now, the last most common one that I'm going to come to, and believe this or not, but I will tell you a joke, I will never tell a lie. I have seen this, and this is when it is known as the cat, right? It's a black cat. Now, I have a black cat, but at the time when I saw this, I did not have a black cat. I was living in a residence that we were renting, and we weren't allowed pets of any kind. And I remember I was about to go to bed and getting ready for bed, and we had this sofa with this kind of chaise longue bit, and I got up and I was about to turn the TV off, and I, at the corner of my eye, swore that I saw what looked like a black cat jump off the chaise longue onto the floor and then disappear. And I remember literally freezing for a minute, because for 1 minute I thought it was normal because I'd grown up with cats all my life. And then my tired brain went, you don't own one anymore though. And that was kind of like when I did a double take and thought, what the hell was that? But then again, like I said, very quickly thought, I'm just tired, I'm seeing things, I need to get some sleep. But apparently, after looking into it, that's also a very common shadow figure that is seen. Now, lastly, when we talk about hauntings, our last one of the evening is portals. Now, portals are not a new concept by any means. Portals have been known in different types of witchcraft, in paganism, in other faiths, and in particular to do with Irish mythology and the Fae. So when it comes to portals, they aren't new, but when it comes to them to do with hauntings, they are more of a new concept. So in the term of hauntings, people believe that portals can be created either by somebody doing what they would consider dark magic, or playing with Ouija boards, which could then open a portal and welcome unwelcomed entities and spirits into the home, basically by essentially opening a door and just letting anybody come in. Some people compare it to as if you left your front door open and just, expected only good people with good intentions to come in. Now, in lots of different cultures, the idea of portals has existed, as I said, for many, many a year, and some people definitely associate them very strongly with mirrors. So there are some cultures that will not sleep across from a mirror, opposite a mirror, because they believe that when you're in your sleeping state, you are at your most vulnerable. And during your sleeping state, when you're at your most vulnerable, is when an entity could come through and take advantage of you in your sleep. The other thing is that more recently, and this is when it comes to the haunting idea of portals, is they believe that two mirrors facing each other creates a portal. So again, that welcomes any entity of any kind to enter the home, household or building. So imagine you had a room, and on one side of the wall you had a mirror, opposite side of the wall you have another mirror, and they are directly facing each other. And that in itself would be the idea of opening a portal for spirits, entities or beings to cross through and enter your domain. Now in witchcraft, and when I say witchcraft, I'm not talking about anything negative or dark here, but we quite believe that mirrors can indeed be portals, so they need to be locked. And what we mean by this is you take something like rosemary water, because rosemary is a protective herb, or Florida water, or even moon water, which is just water that has been charged under the full moon, and you wash the mirror, wash it clean, you dry it off, and then either with your own saliva or a bit of the moon water that you used, in each corner of the mirror you draw a protective sigil, and whatever that protective sigil may be for you. And that is a way of you locking the mirror as you would lock a door, to ensure that nothing nefarious or malevolent could cross through into your home. And with that, my friends, we come to the end of tonight's video. I would like to thank you so much for joining me this evening. As always, I am honoured and very, very grateful. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and a comment if you did. I would really, really appreciate it. It definitely helps with the algorithm. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And I look forward to seeing you soon.